Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you my review of the Humble Choice Bundle from March 2025. There were several games this month that I didn't really know anything about, and immediately assumed that it might be a weaker month. But, as usual, I was surprised to find it wasn't that bad. Let me know what you think of this month's bundle in the comments below, be sure to check the timestamps for specific games, and stay tuned for my final thoughts at the end. Okay, let's get to the review. Starting off the bundle is Cavern of Dreams, a whimsical 3D platformer with an N64 aesthetic charm. You play as Finn, a young dragon who's trying to find his lost siblings, all who happen to be unhatched eggs. He has to travel to a variety of different areas and search the nooks and crannies of each place, while also collecting food to feed his siblings when they eventually hatch. The platforming gameplay felt really good. Normally, I have issues with 3D platformers, but that wasn't really the case with Cavern of Dreams. Movement felt a bit floaty, but nothing too over the top. Each level seemed to be semi-open areas the player can explore and find the eggs while completing certain puzzles. I think the puzzle solving was done well in the first level I played, and didn't seem too unnecessarily challenging. Furthermore, there are a ton of eggs to collect, but as you collect more, you could receive hints from your unhatched siblings as to where to find another one. And as you collect these eggs, Finn gains new abilities like gliding, so that he could reach other areas in the level. The game was cute. I really liked how charming the whole atmosphere was. I definitely see myself coming back to play this with my daughter, as it reminded me a lot of Spyro, which she also liked. Next up is Racine, an auto-battler, deck builder, roguelite. Ooh boy. Well, I think for longtime viewers, you already know what I'm going to say about this one. Straight up, this isn't for me. However, I'd go a bit further and say this isn't just because of the genre. It's just not that good. Racine does try to add a unique system to the combat in the form of active time battles. Enemies attack on delays, and the player can parry attacks if they time correctly when playing cards. Points for effort, but this lone idea is just not enough to save it. It's slow-paced and gets repetitive rather quickly. There's not really much of a story besides some generic set dressing, and I'm not really a fan of the minimalist-looking pixel art. To contrast the phrase, "it checked all my boxes," this would obviously check none of them. I'm completely content with not coming back to this one, and if the itch ever arises to play a deck builder roguelite, well, there's countless others given in past Humble Choice months that are far better. Third, Whoopass, Immortal Death, is surprisingly more competent than what I figured it would be. It's a hack and slash RPG that has some charm, but it's definitely rough around the edges. The charm comes from the game's use of humor that makes fun of fantasy tropes and constantly breaks the fourth wall. It uses a narrator which does other voices, narrating certain sections, and does a surprisingly good job given the very obvious indie pedigree of the game.
Now that we have reached the end of the tutorial level, the player is ready for the actual game. But here's also the mandatory deadly swinging trap section with the jumping puzzle, just as expected.
However, as humor goes, it's gonna be subjective. Personally, I didn't really find most of it that funny. It wasn't horrible, but I find games like this to be hard to get me laughing. I suppose I did chuckle a couple of times though. The combat here is passable, but I could see people calling it a bit floaty. There's no lock-on option, and sometimes the hero doesn't quite attack in the direction I want him to face. But it's also not that difficult, so it really wasn't a bother that much. I liked it and thought that finding other weapons might be fun if the variety offers actual distinct gameplay. Overall, I could see it being fun for a couple of hours, but then it probably will wear out its welcome. At least for me, anyhow. Gravity Circuit is another retro-inspired platformer, this time of the 2D variety. A world of robots is suddenly being attacked again by the virus army. Gravity Circuit, or Kai, is the last of the Guardians and must protect the city, as well as stop his comrades who have been turned over to the dark side, I guess. Or maybe just reprogrammed. The art of the game stood out to me with its obviously limited color palette. However, each of the colors are used in a way to make characters stand out from each other and pop against the background. As opposed to Racine, I felt Gravity Circuit used its colors well. The gameplay is top-notch. I played it on normal, and that difficulty felt just right. It was challenging, but not punishingly so. I felt like every death I had was my own fault, and it usually required me to learn the patterns through the platforming and combat sections. I'm not normally into platformers as I mentioned, but it felt really good here. I also liked the upgrades you could purchase from different vendors in the hub area for things like different special moves or double jump. I'm sure finding the collectibles and currency in the levels to purchase these things will encourage multiple runs. The final thing to point out is, the soundtrack was great, with several upbeat chiptunes that matched the gameplay perfectly. I definitely look forward to playing this again. Following that is Tales of Kenzera Zao, a Metroidvania based on Bantu mythology. Actually, I played my hour of this about a year ago when I covered the demo during Steam Next Fest. My thoughts on it remain the same for those who watched that video. Essentially, I really like the Bantu lore and mythology used for inspiration. It's nice seeing something that isn't as represented in traditional media, and I welcome these kinds of stories and settings. Extra points because the game has voice dialogue in Swahili, which, if you've been around my channel for a while now, you know that I usually tend to like playing a game in the intended language if that's an option. Obviously, a unique setting isn't enough to make a good game, but luckily the gameplay is solid. Combat is fun and fast-paced. There are two different fighting stances depending on if you're wearing the Sun or Moon mask. The Sun mask seems to be heavier melee attacks, whereas the Moon mask is lighter ranged attacks. I did find it a bit easy, but I'm playing on a normal, so I'd probably need to bump up the difficulty. I also love the movement, it's fluid and responsive. One thing that surprised me about it is that you have a wide range of movement right away, which is not usually the case in Metroidvanias, as you usually need to earn those things, like a double jump. There are definitely upgrades to get that will require you to backtrack to areas you previously couldn't get to, of course, but it was a freeing feeling to be able to double jump, wall jump, and dash in the air right out of the gate. I liked my time with it before, and I'm happy to finally add it to my collection. Hopefully, I'll be able to return to it soon. Next we have Wild Hearts, which is a big monster fighting game taking obvious inspiration from the Monster Hunter license, and probably why Humble included it in this bundle for all the people who can't afford Monster Hunter Wilds. Essentially, this gives players big monsters to fight with a variety of weapons. There is a story here, but it didn't seem like anything too compelling. Obviously, you want to play this game because of the gameplay. Now, I've never really played Monster Hunter at all other than Monster Hunter World, and I probably didn't even get halfway through that. So I really can't compare Wild Hearts to its inspiration other than telling you they're similar. Graphically, the world was beautiful and I liked the creature designs that I saw. There seemed to be a variety of weapons, although I didn't get to experiment too much with the different ones. I did like this bamboo umbrella though, which at times I felt like Mary Poppins flying around with it.
I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
The big departure from Monster Hunter is the inclusion of the katakuri, which are these simple contraptions that the player can materialize out of thin air. These can be things like crates or springs, but also more complicating things like a tent and a simple forge. Katakuri can be used as a way to help in traversal, but they could also help in battle. I tended to use the crates which players could use to jump off of and deal a big damage hit on the monster. While I didn't use them, springs were suggested to me to be used as a way to dodge out of the way of enemy attacks. The system seems robust, and it felt like it'd be a lot of fun figuring out which katakuri to use at the right times. I really liked my time with this one. As I said, I don't have the background with Monster Hunter to make comparisons of good or bad, but this actually helped Wild Hearts by being able to stand on its own in my mind. I was surprised by the low review score on Steam though, but funny enough, most people cited poor performance as the reason. Not saying that it's not a thing, but personally, I didn't experience any performance issues. Not last, but maybe least if you ask Homeworld fans, is Homeworld 3, a real-time strategy game set in space. I never played Homeworld 1 or 2, which came out back in the day. I even got the remastered versions at some point, and still haven't found the time, so I don't really get the hate for Homeworld 3 if you were solely looking at Steam reviews. That said, my slightly over an hour time with the game wasn't nearly enough to know if it's a good game or not. What Homeworld 3 does, and the other two Homeworld titles, if I remember right, not including Deserts of Karak, which took place on a planet, is give players control over ships not just on a flat plane in space, but instead they could also orient their ships along the Z-axis. Personally, I thought this was cool, but didn't really see a reason for this in the short amount of time with it. It seemed relatively easy to just select your units and have them attack a relative area of baddies rather than micromanaging them. Although the better RTS player tends to be good at micromanaging. I suppose I probably need to get further in the campaign or play the game's equivalent to a random map or something to see why the Z-axis is so important. Other than that, it felt like a standard RTS. You gather resources and produce units, while also trying to have map awareness. The spectacle of it all was really nice though. I liked zooming in on the strike craft and watching them dogfight. Everything looked great, and I think I'd want to play Homeworld for that alone. There is a story, but I think playing the other games probably would be beneficial to understanding some of the sci-fi world-building mumbo-jumbo people saying cutscenes. There is an introductory video talking about Homeworld up until that point, but all it did was make me feel like I should be playing the prequels first. 1 hour just wasn't enough time to really say my thoughts on this game since I only got to the tutorial and the first 2 missions in the campaign, which were more or less tutorial missions. What I do know is that I liked it enough to pique my interest in trying the remastered collection first before deciding if I want to come back to Homeworld 3. The headliner this month is Pacific Drive, which coincidentally enough, I've already reviewed. So if you want to hear my full thoughts, then please check out that review in the card above or description below. Otherwise, here's my Cliff Notes version. Pacific Drive combines aspects of a driving game with survival game elements. Instead of building a base though, you put all your efforts and resources into upgrading and maintaining your station wagon. You drive through the Olympic Exclusion Zone, which is set on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State, and for those unfamiliar, that means Northwest USA, otherwise known as the Pacific Northwest. Anyway, across these lands are supernatural anomalies, with some that are harmless but maybe a bit creepy. But many of them just want to destroy your car, whether by zapping it, pushing it around, or puncturing your tires. Players start a journey by selecting a destination and making their way there, or a series of destinations depending on the length of the run. Each stop on the route has the players driving through a small area, though some are bigger than others. Periodically, players will want to stop at points of interest to gather resources, whether for upgrades or to repair/refuel their vehicle. All the while, a storm chases you. In order to escape it, you need to gather bits of energy scattered around the map to open a portal and get back to the safety of your garage. Pacific Drive's biggest strength is how tactile everything felt. From the driving to the fixing of your car and all the UI elements, all being things the player has to interact with. One of the most enjoyable things in this game is surprisingly just fixing up the car in the garage, with the rain pattering outside and some tunes playing on the in-game radio, which by the way, most of the songs are pretty good. Since I last played, they apparently let you put in your own custom music and also have completely customizable difficulty, so some of those things like the resource grind or driving feel can be relieved or made more difficult depending on your preference. Overall, the game is fun, but I did feel things started getting grindy by the end, but that's kind of what you sign up for with a survival game. I don't think I'm too keen about playing it again, but I did enjoy my playthrough. Okay, let's wrap this up and see if this bundle is worth it or not. I based my rating solely on whether I thought the game was worth playing on about an hour or so of hands-on gameplay. Also, I'd be grateful if you could please give the video a like if you're enjoying it, because that really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm gods. Overall, I'm surprised and happy to say that this month isn't bad. I imagine most will immediately write it off because of either the 2 origin keys or that many of these games they probably never heard of, and more power to them. As I said last month, I prefer Steam keys too, but Humble and EA have shown time and again that they will put EA keys into the bundles. I'm still happy to have gotten both Tales of Kenzera and Wild Hearts, as I wanted to play both for some time. As for the rest of the bundle, obscure indie games constantly surprise me, which is what I love the most about doing these reviews. It forces me to play every game when before I probably would have written a game off without thinking twice. The last thing I want to comment on is Pacific Drive is the headliner? Seems a bit crazy to me. I mean, it's a good game, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't have thought it would take the headliner spot. I would have guessed Homeworld 3 or Wild Hearts would have had the honors, but maybe the low Steam scores barred them from it. Anyway, let's get on with the recommendations, starting with the must-plays this month, which is Wild Hearts. I'm not sure what it is about Wild Hearts that really elevated this game for me, but I enjoyed my time playing it. I know that I did think that Monster Hunter World was a bit grindy for me, so maybe that might be the same feeling I'd get from Wild Hearts if I give it more time. But yeah, right now, I can't wait to jump back in. In my strong recommendations, I placed Pacific Drive, Tales of Kenzera Zao, Gravity Circuit, and Cavern of Dreams. Pacific Drive has some of that survival game grind that I dislike, but the overall blend of driving game meets survival game in a unique setting really had me interested throughout my time with it. Tales of Kenzera brings a unique setting of Bantu mythology, which is great and also has seemingly fun Metroidvania gameplay. Gravity Circuit's retro platforming may seem off-putting to some at first glance, such as myself, but I'm now glad that I own it because it actually was really good. Cavern of Dreams was another platformer that I think I would normally pass over, but the cutesy charm of the game blended with the good level design makes this one another that I'm surprised with. My week recommendations hold Sir Whoopass or Mortal Death and Homeworld 3. Sir Whoopass just doesn't excel at any one thing, and its whole shtick that would get people playing is the humor the game uses. If you love that, then I imagine Sir Whoopass will be a lot of fun, but if not, then it's probably not something worth spending more than a couple hours with. Homeworld 3 seems like maybe it's an alright RTS despite what countless Steam reviews say otherwise, but I think I definitely want to play the first two before bothering with the third one. At least the space battles were cool to watch though. Finally, in my Don't Bother With section is Racine. The unique blend of mechanics is interesting, but executed in a way that felt boring to me. I imagine for some others this might really click, especially for hardcore fans of the deck building genre who are looking for something different. Do you agree with my thoughts? What games, if any, are you looking forward to playing? Let me know what your thoughts are, if there are any different recommendations you'd make in the comments below. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.